I was trained as a scientist. My background's in the hard sciences, physical sciences, the earth sciences. In the 60s and 70s, when I received that training, there was no room for the possibility of the kind of things that we're talking about now, the kinds of things that suggest that our inner world and our inner thoughts, feelings, emotions, beliefs in any way affect the world around us. And it was through direct experience. What I began to understand was that this is the great secret that everyone knows except us in the West. Almost any other culture that we go to, from the monasteries in Egypt and Tibet and India into Bolivia and Peru, the indigenous traditions, little villages in the Andes Mountains, they all know that there is this experience that we can have inside of our bodies that affects our world in some way, and our science simply has not allowed for that historically. Well, I was trained as a scientist, and I was trained to look in the world around me for my answers, so I began to go to these places. I began to go into the monasteries, all the places that I mentioned. And it was through the direct experience of sitting in the presence of people who have lived and practiced the kinds of traditions that Louise Hay and the other authors I'm so blessed to be sharing the stage and this information with, that they teach about. And what we begin to understand is that this is the place where science got it wrong. There are two places, two assumptions that science has made, modern science. And they're coming full circle and correcting that now. But the first one is that the space that we believe is empty is not really so empty. It's full of a living essence, of a living material that we're only beginning to understand, number one. And number two, the fact, and it is a fact now, that we may have experiences inside of our bodies that influence the world beyond our bodies through the conduit of what's in this space. So it was in going into the monasteries and the nunneries and speaking with the indigenous people, looking at them eye to eye, heart to heart, God to God, and I could say to these people, when you just performed that miracle, when you just performed that miraculous healing, what is it that you did inside of your body to make that happen? And if I didn't understand what they told me, I'd ask them again and again and again through the translators until I understood that they were creating an experience, producing an effect inside of their bodies that my science never told me was possible or existed. And that was the path that led me. I just want to emphasize, science is good. And I believe our science is good and served us well. It simply is incomplete. And so it was that path that allowed me to flesh out the missing pieces that we're only beginning to understand today, marrying the best science of our time with the wisdom, 5,000 years of wisdom of our past, into a greater understanding. And that understanding brings us right back to the question. That's a long answer to a short question. But it brings us back to where we're only now beginning to understand that there is something that we can do in our lives that influence not only the physical body, ours and those of other people around us, but literally influence the physical reality of our world, and that changes everything. It changes everything that we in the West believe about ourselves. Something that people typically talk about in a technical organization. They don't wake up in the morning and say, what kinds of feelings, what kinds of dreams, what kinds of healings did you have over the weekend? And they're talking about who won the football game and who won the lotteries. But this is where it brings us, the relevance in our lives, because we all are having experiences every day, whether we are consciously aware of it or not. Those experiences are physically affecting our bodies and our world. Our hearts are the strongest magnetic field in our bodies, and our hearts are the strongest electrical field in our bodies, much more so than the brain. While the brain does create those kinds of fields, the heart is many times stronger. And what the science now is showing is that when you can change the field that the atom is in, you change the atom, and we're made of those atoms. So when we have feelings in our hearts, we're changing the field that connects the stuff everything is made of, and we literally are altering our physical reality in ways that sound miraculous in Western science. But again, this is the great secret everyone knows except us, because Western science has only arrived at this understanding. You go to these ancient and indigenous traditions and cultures, it's where they begin. They begin with the understanding, sure, everything's connected, and sure, we're part of it. And then they take us one step further and they say, here, I'll show you. I'll show you how to create the effects in your body so that you can that you can heal your body and you can heal the bodies of others. You can change your self-esteem and your body will mirror that change. It doesn't have to be a long, slow, drawn-out process. It can happen very, very quickly. Scientifically, it appears that this field, the divine matrix, it is a mirror and a bridge between our inner and our outer worlds. And it can only give us what we give it to work with. And the interesting thing is that we have been conditioned to feel the feelings of the things that we don't want in life and that we're afraid of. We wake up in the morning and we see the 6 o'clock news and all the things to be afraid of, and then we go through our day saying, oh, I hope I'm not going to see that today, or I hope it's not around the corner. And my question so fascinated me, where do we learn to feel the things that we don't want rather than things that we choose to have? And how would our lives be different if we could cut through all of the static and simply choose in our lives what we would like each moment of each day, or our relationships, or our abundance, or our careers, or the peace in our families to look like? What would our lives look like if we could do that? And there's very good scientific evidence showing precisely what our lives would look like, because we would very quickly experience everything that we've created. Because we can have the same thought or the same affirmation and imbue it with a different emotion and have completely different feelings and create a different outcome. And this is the great secret that was edited out of our Christian and pre-Christian, Judeo-Christian traditions. When 45 books were removed in the 4th century, 20 were taken out completely. Another 25 were condensed and rearranged. And we know this because we found the information now in the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Nag Hammadi Library, the Coptic, the Gnostic texts. So we know what those texts would have said if we had had them. I think everyone senses or suspects that there's an untapped potential in the human body. I've been on every continent of the earth, and I've asked every audience I've ever been in, do you feel that that's there? And they say, yes, we feel there's something there, but we just can't quite get it. Why is that? So we have a feeling that there's more to us, but we rely on a written validation in a 5,000-year-old text or a scientific study to tell us that it's true. And this is, I think, the value of going into those texts, is we get to see the words that literally say, in the Gospel of Thomas, the lost Gospel of Thomas, it literally says, when these two become one, when thought and emotion become one, then you'll say to the mountain, move, and the mountain will move. And I used to think that that was a metaphor. And I now have seen enough to know that moving a cancerous tumor inside the body of a living woman, that's moving a mountain to me. And it's all done from marrying thought and emotion together. And I asked him a question. I said, when we see your prayers on the outside, and we see you in the chanting hall for 12, 16, 18 hours a day, and we see the bells and the bowls and the mudras and the mantras and the gongs and the chimes and the incense, when we see your prayers on the outside, I said, what are you doing on the inside? And this was the man that looked at me. He said, you've never seen our prayers, because a prayer cannot be seen. He said, what you see are the things we do to create the feeling in our body, and the feeling is the prayer. And then he turned the question on me, and he said, how do you do this in your culture? Through a translator. And I began to think about this and realize that when we lost the words in our most cherished spiritual traditions that tell us that feeling is a language that speaks to our bodies in this world, when we lost the words that validated that, we began to think that the words themselves were the prayers. And if we say, or the affirmations, and if we say those words the right number of times, the right time of day or the right time of year, that we've said our prayer or our affirmation, and then if it doesn't work, we get frustrated and we say, well, my prayer didn't work, or my affirmation's not working for me, because we lost the link with feeling and emotion. We have the ability to feel in our bodies the stuff that holds this universe together. And we're really not so different from those quantum particles in the stars beyond us, or in the tumor that's in front of us, in the suffering of our loved ones, or in the peace between the nations. It's all part of the same thing.